24-year-old Shannan Gilbert, a native of Jersey City, was a Craigslist sex worker who vanished during the early morning hours of May 1st, 2010. Shannan Gilbert had traveled from Manhattan to Oak Beach, New York, which is a small beachside community connected to Captree and Gilgo Beach, New York. She was to visit a client, Joseph Brewer. Working such a dangerous lifestyle, Shannan Gilbert was driven to Brewer's home by her driver, Michael Pack, who also acted as her security. But something happened that morning that would eventually expose a horrifying secret. Shortly before 5 a.m. that morning, Shannan Gilbert called 911 from inside Brewer's home. Gilbert would tell the 911 dispatcher, "There is somebody after me. Somebody's after me, please." At times during the 911 call, you could hear her client, Joseph Brewer, as well as her security, Michael Pack, speaking and trying to get her out of Brewer's home. Joseph is heard saying, "Come on, let's go. We'll all go outside." Shannan Gilbert is also heard saying, "Please get me out of here, Mike." Shannan Gilbert exits the Brewer home and reaches a neighbor, Gus Coletti, who called 911 and told dispatchers that there's a young girl about 14 years old running around screaming. Within a flash, Shannan Gilbert then ran from Coletti's home and tried to get help from another neighbor, Barbara Brennan, who also called 911 and told dispatchers that some woman is knocking on my door. She says she's in danger. I'm not letting her in. Shannan Gilbert then disappears into the night. A month after her disappearance, the Suffolk County Police Department's Missing Persons Bureau asked Officer John Malia, along with his trained cadaver dog, a German Shepherd named Blue, to search for the missing Shannan Gilbert. Over the course of summer 2010, Officer Malia unsuccessfully searched the gated beach community of Oak Beach, where Shannan Gilbert had last been seen. On December 11th of 2010, Officer Malia made a new attempt at a search by staying close to the shoulder of the Ocean Parkway. Malia based his choice of search area on FBI data that indicated that a killer usually had tendencies to dump and discard their victims' bodies close to the roadways. The areas along Ocean Parkway were thick of vegetation and covered with a light layer of snow. But Officer Malia's cadaver dog alerted to a scent which the pair tracked to a skeleton in a disintegrated burlap bag. The remains of the burlap bag were later identified as Melissa Bartholomew's. Bartholomew was 24 years old and had worked as an online escort. She disappeared in July of 2009. Police discovered 3 additional bodies while searching the scene for further evidence. These remains would later be identified as Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. Maureen Brainerd Barnes was reportedly missing by a friend to the Norwich Police Department on July 14, 2007. She was a sex worker advertising on Craigslist, Backpage, and other sites, and was working out of hotels and motels in the Manhattan area. On the night of July 9th in 2007, Brainerd Barnes told her friend she would be going to meet someone outside of the motel on an outcall and was never heard from again. Megan Waterman was 22 years old when she disappeared on June 6, 2010. She lived in Scarborough, Maine when she went missing. Waterman worked as an escort and advertised on Craigslist and Backpage. Relatives stated that she boarded a New York-bound Concord Trailway bus. She was staying at a Holiday Inn Express on Long Island and left on the morning of June 6th to meet a client. She was never heard from again. Amber Lynn Costello was 27 years old and living in West Babylon, Long Island when she went missing. She was last seen on September 2nd, 2010. Amber Costello worked as an escort and advertised as well on Craigslist and Backpage. Costello was last seen leaving her home on foot without her cell phone. She was going to meet a client. Sadly, she was never reported missing to the authorities. It wasn't until her remains were finally found on December 13, 2010, that anyone had answers to her whereabouts. The bodies of 4 female victims, known as the Gilgo Four, were found approximately 500 feet from each other. All 4 victims had been strangled and wrapped in burlap. In March 2011, the partial remains of 20-year-old Jessica Taylor were found along Ocean Parkway. Her naked and dismembered torso, missing its head and hands, was discovered 45 miles east of Gilgo Beach in Manorville, New York. DNA would later match the 2 findings. In April 2011, police discovered 3 additional sets of remains. These remains were baby Doe, an unidentified female toddler 16 to 24 months of age, an unidentified Asian person who had died from blunt force trauma, and Valerie Mack, whose partial remains, like those of Jessica Taylor, had been found in Manorville years earlier in November 2000. 2 additional bodies were found in Nassau County. The first was an unidentified woman known as Fire Island Jane, whose partial remains had previously been found on Fire Island in 1996. The second, Peaches, aka Jane Doe No. 3, was an unidentified woman with a distinctive tattoo of peaches, who was later found to be the mother of the unidentified toddler found in Suffolk County. Police speculated that because of similarities in the murders of Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor, that they may have been murdered by a second separate killer. But on November 29, 2011, police announced that they believe one person to be responsible for all 10 murders and that the perpetrator is almost certainly from Long Island. The single killer theory stems from common characteristics between the condition of the remains and forensic evidence related to the bodies. Shannan Gilbert's remains were finally located in Oak Beach in December 2011, 19 months after her disappearance. The cause of her death is contested. Her disappearance is what led to the discoveries of 10 bodies along Gilgo Beach. A serial killer was at large, and police had very little clues. That was until July of 2023, when 59-year-old Rex Heuermann, a resident of Massapequa Park in Long Island, was arrested in Midtown Manhattan and charged in the murders of 3 of the Gilgo Four victims, Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy, and Amber Costello. Heuermann, married and the father of 2 children, is a New York-based architect whose firm, RH Consultants, is based in Manhattan. Rex Heuermann had been in the detectives' crosshairs for a while. In January 2023, investigators took a swab from leftover pizza crust Heuermann discarded in the trash outside of his Manhattan office. DNA evidence linked him to a hair found on the burlap sack where Megan Waterman's remains were found. Other connections, such as burner phones used to torment the victims' loved ones, had been connected to Rex Heuermann, as well as disturbing search history on his computer. Rex Heuermann's home in Massapequa Park is also within proximity of Gilgo Beach, and the same burlap found at the crime scenes are also connected to burlap found in Rex Heuermann's home. Rex Heuermann's wife filed for divorce days after his arrest. She'd been disgusted, shocked, and embarrassed at the news before telling police officers, "Okay, it is what it is." Rex Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of murder. We will watch as this case plays out over the next year or so, as there is so much left to be known about Rex Heuermann, a man who lived a double life under the radar of so many.